the starting point for this afternoon is really having a look at the assets, the team that you have around you. It might be just your good self, but don't forget, of course, that you've got friends and family who may well be supporting you. You may well have employees as well. But ultimately, with me saying, yes, there's loads of money knocking around. Yes, there is. But the critical thing is that you have a team, either yourself, you've got particular skills, a wide range of skills to be able to commercialize your ideas, or you've got access to other people who will help you commercialize your ideas. So the first bit that we are going to look at is the team, and then we will get into the details of the business model. So just a brief introduction from me. My background, I'm an economist. I worked with a firm of chartered accountants as a marketing director some years ago, and scroll forward through to a marketing consultant, strategic marketing consultant. That took me to throughout the world. Great time in Asia Pacific, a bit of time in Germany, doing a fair amount of work in the chemical industry. And more in the last 10 years, I've been working as a high growth coach with businesses such as yours who have a desire to really achieve substantial growth. So that's me. What I want to do is now get into a very brief, and I mean brief, if you'll be so kind, introduction from you guys. If I can just go down the participant list. All I'm really after, guys, is just a very brief. You name what your company is, or your business idea, and if you have any specific questions. So if you take more than 30 seconds, I'll set Rachel on you. That's a slight lie, but there we go. Really quite brief, if you would be so kind, guys. I really appreciate it. So I'm going to go down alphabetically on my participant list. So Becky Hope Ross, good afternoon. We sort of said briefly hello, but what's your company and what's the business idea?
Thanks, Jed. So I'm Becky, obviously, and my company is Busy Bee Organisers Limited, and essentially it offers business support. So whether that's virtual assistant services, social media management, customer management, it's just offering a helping hand to those that are time hungry.
Okay, lovely. What a great expression, time hungry. Thank you for that, Becky. Welcome. So much for alphabetic. Oh, flipping heck. Now, you see, this is really interesting. Shirley hasn't muted her microphone, so you have boosted yourself right up to the top of my list. So therefore, clearly, we have to go to Shirley next. Shirley, good afternoon.
Hello, good afternoon. I'm Shirley. I haven't got a name for my company yet because I was only made redundant a couple of weeks ago. So
okay.
I'm in the throes of setting it up. So basically what I'm looking to do is set up various workshops to be hosted in the local community centre for new businesses or existing, to do a series of workshops really to increase the sales and business. So all the locals are really keen on the idea. So that's my plan.
Cunning or otherwise. Welcome, Shirley. Thank you very much. Right, so now if we go to Clarissa, who hopefully has received the email that Rachel was trying to send to her. So
I have,
Clarissa,
thank you.
Fantastic. Clarissa, good afternoon.
Hello, I'm Clarissa Jordan. My company is called Her Luxury Wellness Limited. It's an online health, wealth and beauty lifestyle website that aims at providing spiritual solutions for women. And the aim is to become an authority in the area. I started the company when we went into the first lockdown, the 23rd of March. And so just taking steps every day to make it grow.
Fantastic. Welcome. Well, the next on my list would be a lady by the name of Elaine Simons. Elaine, come on down. Go on, you've got to unmute yourself, Elaine. Elaine and I know each other reasonably well. So come on, you've got to introduce yourself.
Okay. I'm a bit of an interloper. Jed
You
and I
are?
yes, I am. Jed and I have worked together for 10 years, and I do run some webinars, and I'm just sitting in for the first hour on this occasion. So, hello, everybody.
Fantastic. And so she's known me for 10 years and she's still talking to me, but only under sufferance. Right. Hazel Hardy. Good afternoon, Hazel. I think Hazel is with the fluttering drapes, as it were. Hazel, good afternoon and welcome.
Hello. Good afternoon, Jed. Good afternoon, everybody. I'm Hazel. I run, offer mindfulness training to individuals, and I'm just setting up the Lancaster Mindfulness Company to try and bring mindfulness into organisations and corporate environments where I think there's a big need for stress reduction. So I'm here to learn about how to do that and how to finance it, basically.
Lovely. Okie doke. Right. Welcome, Hazel. I think next on my list would be Janet Hargreaves. Good afternoon, Janet. Janet, are you with us? Maybe we will come back to Janet. Okay. Well, I'll make a note. We may well come back to Janet. Joanne Boyd, good afternoon.
Hi there, everybody. Again, apologies that I'm not on the video. I'm a little under the weather with a broken arm at the moment, so I apologise for that, but it's great to be here. I recently returned from the States. I had a 28-year career in the States and returned back to the UK just about 12 months ago. And I started my own business called CJX Business Services. CJX stands for Client Journey Experience. And two main thrusts to my business, Jed, a little similar to what you do actually, is working with SMEs in Lancashire on reassessment and development of business plans for growth, which obviously is critical right now as we're in and out of COVID. And then secondly, really it's a strategy that's a key differentiator, I think, in the industry today. It's really around client journey experience. And it really looks at a company's whole strategy around attracting, onboarding, retaining and growing their client base, and ensuring that their existing clients become true advocates for their business and become a really good sales channel for them. So it's kind of an interesting strategy. So those are the two main thrusts of my business. Again, Joanne, CGX Business Services. I'm based in a little village called Pilling between Preston and Lancaster.
Fantastic. Joanne, lovely to have you with us. Thank you very much indeed. Whereabouts in the States were you?
I was in upstate New York, a place called Rochester, which is about an hour east of Niagara Falls.
Yeah. Fantastic.
Yeah.
Lovely. Thank you for that. I'm just going to ask whether Janet can hear us and wants to say hello. Janet Hargreaves.
Hi, yes.
Hiya.
Hello, I don't know if you've been able to see me yet or not. I've just sorted out the kids, so.
Right.
Juggling.
Yep.
Hi. Excuse the rustic bike on the wall. That's my husband's. It doesn't get used very often.
Well, there are so many comments that could be made after that, but then we're not going to go down that route. Janet, would you like to introduce your company, please, your business idea?
Yeah, it's my husband's company, CLCS. I'm director of him. It's commercial laundering and catering services. So he effectively installs and services commercial washers, dryers, kitchens for places such as nursing homes. And he's been self-employed about 18 months now. So he is on his own at the moment, but he's been very busy, thankfully. So it's just maybe looking to see where we go with that now.
Okay, lovely. Welcome. Next on my list would be Peter Crisp. Good afternoon, Peter.
Good afternoon. My name is Peter Crisp. I started a business on the 1st of August, which is called, short name is Ask Plastics, which is basically a technical sales consultancy. So basically taking my previous roles in technical sales, employed on an employed basis, and becoming a consultant for numbers of my ex-customers and associates. So far, it's going quite well, and hopefully by the end of this month, I'm likely to be fully occupied. Let's put it that way. So,
fantastic, Peter. You're very welcome. Love to see you.
I might have to dip in and out occasionally, unfortunately. But,
no
so
worries.
Yeah.
The cash register has to ring from time to time.
Absolutely.
Rachel Shaw, good afternoon.
Hello. So yes, I have started up a business consultancy focused on operational efficiencies, strategy and growth, but specifically focused on businesses which are ethical, purpose-driven and eco-friendly, because I wanted to work with people who shared similar values and know that they can work with somebody who has their sort of values at heart as well. And it's not just about turning a profit, but it's about, you know, balancing your time and all of the other nice reasons that people work for themselves. So that's what I do.
Excellent. You're very welcome. Now then, where are we going? I think we are with Rebecca Lindley. Good afternoon, Rebecca.
Good afternoon. So my company is Disruptive Focus, which was started this month. It's a culmination of 11 years in education, and I've just completed my Master's in Organisational Psychology.
Okay.
So like everybody else, it's a coaching and business consultancy company, but it really is more focused on the people within it rather than the systems and the strategies for growth, particularly around self-leadership, so empowering individuals to take the onus upon themselves for their own career paths and development.
Lovely. Okay, Rebecca, welcome. Now I see on my list, Shirley's snuck down to the bottom of my list, so we've already spoken with Shirley. So we will go to Tim, Tim Fieldstead.
Hi all. Sorry, no picture, but it's very dark outside and the lights aren't working that well. So,
fair enough.
So I'll be starting Halloween early, I think. Right. Well, as you can see, I run a company called Tips and Quackers. People of a certain age will probably recognise that, but I'm completely different.
Steady. Yeah.
So I make satchels, handmade satchels, all based in the UK. I use recycled, ethically sourced materials. Running for, as I say, for about 18 months on and off, lockdown and off. And I'm based up in Haslingden at the moment. Just at that stage of I've got a very cluttered living room where I'm working from, so I'm trying to get life sorted and sort of production a bit quicker, really. That's my stage.
Fantastic. Well, you're very welcome, Tim. And last but definitely not least, we have William Green. William, good afternoon.
Hi, you all right?
Oh, I'm fine, sir. How are you?
Yeah, I'm good, thank you. So yeah, I'm Will, and my company's called Langdale Group. Started in July, and since then I've been doing a number of tenders for council contracts, police contracts, etc. And basically, with a consortium of other partners, we've developed an app and a program that is basically to tap into the unconscious mind for resilience and well-being. But the aim is that in the future, the sort of aim of the product will be continuing with the unconscious mind, but to do different things. And we're in the process of just starting up an academy to teach other people how to do that.
Oh, okay. Fantastic. Well, welcome one and all. Thank you, Will. Appreciate that. Okay, so I'm just going to come out of this, the presenter view just for a moment, because I want to bring in a piece of software to record some questions, or rather the answers. Here we go. that you may provide. So the starting point is this question, ladies and gents. What I want you to think about is what makes a successful entrepreneur? Who comes to mind? And what is it that makes them different, makes them successful as an entrepreneur? So just give a few moments thought and then start to shout out, and I shall type away and record some of the answers, well, hopefully all the answers that you kindly provide. So what makes a successful entrepreneur? And what I shall do is I shall bring this fantastic piece of software into here. And we shall just do that. Okay, what do we think, guys?
Focus and passion.
Ooh, in that order? I'm joking.
Passion and focus.
There you go. Passion and focus. So who said that? Come on, own up.
Joanne.
Joanne, fantastic. Okay, I won't record necessarily who said. I'm just interested. Passion and focus. Okay, can we do any better than, especially when I can't spell entrepreneur? Always.
Resilient.
Oh, I know that I can recognise. I can recognise that dulcet tone.
Yeah.
Resilient. Okay, or resilience probably is a better way of putting it. Okay. Anything else? What makes a successful entrepreneur, ladies and gents?
Resourcefulness.
Oh, steady.
Adaptability.
This is a spelling test for Jed, clearly. Okay. Somebody else was saying something as well, as Tim mentioned.
Yeah. Resourcefulness.
Oh.
Yeah, I said resourceful.
Yep. Okay.
Belief.
Anything? Say again.
Belief.
Ah. I shall put that up here. Passion, focus, belief. That's sort of belief in what? Dare I ask?
Your own ability and in the market that you're entering into.
Ah. Now, isn't that interesting? I might pick. Was that Clarissa?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. Belief in the market. Now, that's an interesting observation. Okay. Anything else?
Innovative.
Oh. Yep. Last but not least, because we need to move on, but any other thoughts, guys?
Mission and value driven.
Mission and values driven. What's the difference between mission and purpose?
I think that the purpose is kind of, it's why they do what they do, whereas the mission may be a subset of that.
Okay. That's a reasonably good response, I have to say. Okay, then, fantastic. So, when all of this type of stuff is knocking around, who do we think about? Who might have maybe not all of those traits, but a substantial amount of them? Who are we thinking about when we think about
Steve Jobs.
Oh. What was it about him?
Well, he was innovative enough to create a product that was outside of what anyone believed at the time was possible and change the whole industry.
Yeah. So there's your belief in self. I think you're absolutely spot on. Somebody else. Who else?
Branson.
Say again?
Richard Branson.
Oh. Same question then. What was it about Sir Richard, or Mr. as he then was?
I think he's just able to very effectively take people's skills, capabilities, understood what his gaps were in terms of what he could deliver and where he needed to support, and diversify into so many different industries.
So he's very good at diversification. Yeah, absolutely.
Branded diversification.
Mm. Oh, yeah, okay.
Excellent personal brand. A personal brand that could be, that could be diversified and was so successful
in many areas.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, brilliant. Who else?
Alan Sugar.
Oh, I heard Alan Sugar, but I know somebody else said something else. So we'll go with Mr. Sugar first, or Lord Sugar, I should say. What is it about Lord Sugar?
Well, he started from the bottom, basically. He also had a number of, he knows how to deal with failure. He hasn't always been successful, so that's resilience. He's straight talking, he's authentic.
Ooh. Now that's an interesting observation. Thank you, Elaine. One more for luck. Then
James Dyson.
James Dyson.
Yeah, good one.
What is it about Mr. Dyson or Sir Jack? I think
innovative,
Jack,
resourceful.
Yeah. Like Singapore. Ouch! Cheap shot. Flipping heck, Jed. I can't even spell resourceful. There you go. There you go. Okay. Yeah, pretty much. We could go on, and we're not going to. But it was interesting, some observations there about what it takes, and this resilience piece, and can deal with failure. Really interesting observations around what we learn from failure. So, what name a business that Branson failed at?
It's Virgin Records.
Yeah.
Ooh, I always thought of them as a reasonable success. It might not have been global, but
Had a makeup line.
Say again.
He had a makeup line that rivaled Avon. That was a huge, yeah,
I wasn't aware of that.
mistake.
Yeah. There's one in particular that's in my mind, but I'm not suggesting there aren't other failures. What other failures did he have? What a really big one. Think beverage.
Oh, Coca-Cola.
There you go.
Virgin Cola.
Virgin Cola. So the point here is it's not always about entrepreneurial success isn't always about success. It's about failure and what happens as a consequence of that failure. So one of the things that I want some of you guys to do is to fail, by which I mean you test what is required in the marketplace and you fail. And you fail that test, you learn, and then you go again. So therefore you have to test cheaply. But we'll come back to that in a few moments' time. So we've pretty much, nobody mentioned him. Well, flipping heck. So there's Mr. Zuckerberg, but everybody else on this list, you guys have already mentioned.
I think with Zuckerberg, because we all know the story of how he kind of took it, we didn't start it with integrity. So I think that's why people don't put him on the same level as the others.
Well, that sounds like a really good debate topic, which unfortunately we can't get into. But that is okay. Well, thank you for that. I think that was Clarissa, wasn't it? Thank you, Clarissa. So the point is, we have a sense of what entrepreneurialism looks like and the traits of entrepreneurialism. So we will come back to this because the challenge, one of the biggest challenges about being an entrepreneur is this. It is, okay then, I am good at something, i.e. I have a skill. I therefore will be able to run a successful business. The two aren't necessarily the same. So the issue then comes into this. And there was a book by a chap called Michael Gerber. And if I put this into the chat, the book is called E-Myth. And it's been around for a bit now. But he starts to talk about 3 personalities associated with an individual, a successful business. And he talks about being a technician, the skills that we have, And he then talks about being an entrepreneur, identifying the opportunities that exist within the marketplace. So Clarissa mentioned the market a few moments ago. And we also have the skill of being able to manage resource, manage people, manage the business. So the challenge, of course, is that each of us will have a preferred style. Some of us are quite entrepreneurial. Some of us like to focus on the technical bits of delivering a service to customers, and others are really great at managing, husbanding the resources in the business. So the challenge, therefore, is, okay, what personality do you have that is most like these one of these three areas? So which is your preferred style? And what I'm going to do with Rachel's help, big dig in the ribs, Rachel, is to post out a poll to you to just get a sense from you guys as to, we're not going to ask you the mix necessarily, but which one of these three areas do you think you are strongest at? Is it the technician? Is it the manager? Is it the entrepreneur? So just tick which one of those three best describes you, in your opinion. Rach?
Yeah.
It says at the bottom, hosts and panelists cannot vote. Are we sure that everybody can vote?
It's not letting me vote.
No, I'm not sure that we can do it. Maybe we'll come back to that once Rachel's got the technology sorted.
Just looking now.
Yeah, okay. Well, we'll plow on and come back in a bit of a break, and because we will have a break roughly every couple of hours, every hour or so, and then we'll come back to that. Okay, so the point then is that we do have a preferred style. And the challenge, of course, is to, for a lot of us, not all, but for a lot of us, we have a skill and we think, okay, then we can develop a business because we have this skill. Clarissa very presciently said, we need to have belief in the market. The market might not agree that there is a space in the market for the skill that you have. So we have the entrepreneurial trait says, I will identify a gap in the market, a need within the market for people to then to be commercially successful. Are there any questions about that so far?
What would you put if you felt like you were a combination of just all three, like you can't really split yourself into one?
Yeah, it's a good point, Clarissa, and I suspect that all of you will have traits of the technician, traits of the manager, and traits of the entrepreneur. The point usually is that the entrepreneur, as in the right-hand side of the screen, the entrepreneurial bit tends to be smaller than the other two areas. They shouldn't necessarily be a third, but be clear that whether you have a natural entrepreneurial flair or whether you can teach and gain entrepreneurial traits such that you can make that entrepreneurial circle as big as it can be, is the answer to that, Clarissa. There's no right or wrong, but as I say, in a lot of people, rather, not most, a lot of people, the entrepreneurial bit when they start their business is relatively small. That's the issue. Does that make sense? Okay. Are there any other questions? There is silence. Fantastic. Okay. In which case, let us move on. So, what is it that we really need to be able to do to have a fantastically successful business? Well, there are loads of things that we could list, but one of the areas much publicized by Stephen Covey in his book, it sounds like Jed's book club, The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, which is a damn good read. Is that about win-win? You're trying not to get one over on your customers or people that you come into contact with. You are trying to look at life from their perspective and therefore provide a solution that gives you a return and the customer a return, hopefully, because they will then come back and do more business with you. So win-win is a really helpful way of thinking about when dealing with customers. Well, get the cash register ringing, flipping heck. Now, really interestingly, a lot of organizations, particularly online organizations, have the advantage that, you know, in theory, the cash register can ring irrespective of whether you are actually awake. Whereas, for example, if we looked at maybe Peter Crisp's business, I'm guessing Peter at the moment, but I suspect that there are fewer online opportunities for your business than perhaps some of the colleagues who are on the call today. But we need to get that cash ringing as quickly as possible. Maybe not in the areas that ultimately we want to take our business in, but ultimately we need to get that cash flow flowing. We need to be stingy. We need to be very careful about costs, because I'm going to argue in a few moments' time, just get into that test and learn type of mindset. If we haven't got much money, then the testing that we have to do, almost by definition, has to be cheap. So we need to keep costs as low as they can be. When you are planning, I nearly said for the future, but most plans do sort of go for the future, don't they? We need to think about overestimating expenses and underestimating sales. So when banks look at business plans, what they'll typically do is they'll say, well, okay, then you're assuming, let's say, £1,000 a week of sales, for argument's sake. Can your business survive at £600 a week or whatever time period, maybe even 400? Let's just do some sensitivity analysis. So be really clear about, you know, very conservative in terms of your sales, and quite broad in terms of the expenses, just so that you can make sure that you've got a sufficiently robust business. How would you describe your sales engine? What do I mean when I use the term sales engine, guys? What do I mean by that?
The process in which we sell, or the means for which we sell.
Not so much the process. It's the way in which we generate those leads and then convert, then the process. So it's the continual cycle of lead generation and conversion of those leads into pounds, shillings and pence. So can you describe, and we'll talk about this a bit later on, your sales engine? How efficient is your sales engine? Yeah, so it's lead generation through to conversion. It's both. So the marketing is the lead generation, and the sales is that closure process. You're absolutely right, Clarissa, that you mentioned a few moments ago. But think about the sales engine. I think that image is really helpful. We talked about entrepreneurial success. Find ways to drive profits. And we'll talk later on about different revenue streams within your respective businesses. We need to be quite creative. So there's the obvious profit streams, maybe the revenue streams, but how else can we drive profit? Because as soon as we drive profit, the value of your respective businesses starts to improve. One of the central themes of today is about testing. That is, you have an idea, you are in the market at the moment. To what extent can you validate the business idea that you have developed? So we need to test as much as possible the ideas and get that validation to give us confidence, apart from anything else, in what it is that we are striving to achieve. The advent of lockdown has been interesting because the availability of audiobooks and normal books and online courses and the like has offered us the opportunity to really enhance our skills. Stephen Covey talks about sharpening the saw, i.e. improving our knowledge, our understanding, so that we can be more effective. So I would always encourage you to continue your learning process, not just within your respective areas of skill and expertise, but also a wee bit wider than that, just so that you can spot opportunities as and when they present themselves. Big clue, guys, do not discount. Please try and maintain a price point, ideally not the cheapest in the market. Seek and find ways to add value, such that why, if I've given you so much value, why on earth should I discount the services or the product that I have to offer? And the final thing that I'd like to pass on is get help. That sounds rather odd, but it's consistent with you guys being here this afternoon. Namely, there is loads of help out there, some of which you may need to pay for, some of which will be funded. But, you know, being an entrepreneur can be very lonely. There is help out there, so get as much help as possible. And when it succeeds, you might need further help from an international coach as opposed to a national coach. You get the idea. We all have our skill areas, and get a mentor, get access to people with different perspectives, and that will really help you drive your business.
Could I just ask a question? Because I have been thinking about the possibility of trying to work with a mentor. How do you go about trying to find a mentor, or especially in the conditions that we're in, do people want to mentor each other?
Well, there are a number of mentor groups, both inside Lancashire and I think I'm right in saying via Boost, and also the likes of Prince's Trust and other organisations. Without wishing to be too crude, I think it was Clarissa who asked that question, wasn't it? I'm certainly not going to ask your age. Some of the mentoring programs
I'm
do
too
focus.
old for Prince's Trust, that's for sure.
Okay, well, I wasn't going to ask. But if you have a look at well, crudely, Boost Lancashire, there is I'm pretty sure there is a mentoring program there, but also your wider network. You may well be surprised that people are prepared to put in, sometimes free, not always, but sometimes, to help a budding entrepreneur. Find somebody that has been successful in your area and be a wee bit cheeky and say, hiya, you're based in the south, I'm based in the north, will you mentor me? They can only say no, and you'd be absolutely amazed. I know of a young girl, an 18-year-old girl who wrote to Barack Obama when he was president, seeking advice on how to enter international politics. And Obama sent her some thoughts and some advice. It's not mentoring, clearly, but he was more than happy to help this girl who wasn't even an American citizen. So you would be really surprised. So be a wee bit cheeky, very polite, but just answer the question, who would I really like to get help from? It may be in a mentoring situation, it may not, and ask them for some help and advice, and you'd be amazed at how most people will respond. But if you want to have a natter at the end of today's webinar, I can also, you know, have a good old chat with you to see whether there might be other sources that between the two of us we can identify.
Sure, great, thank you.
Okay, so let us then start to think about some of the traits of a successful business. Well, we need to manage the resources that we do have. We need to be able to be clear about the routes by which we're going to get into a market. Clarissa mentioned the belief in the markets. Yeah, absolutely. What are the markets? How do they behave? What are their trends? What other competitors are there in terms of the products and services that currently exist? Okay, we need to have a look at the finances, the costs, and the top line, the revenue line. Absolutely. Partners. Oh boy, one of the most positive and worthwhile areas for any organization is to identify partners with whom you could work. Maybe they can introduce you to some new technology, maybe they can introduce you to some new markets, some different people. Strategic partners, alliances, very powerful mechanism by which to drive your business. So the point is all of these things and potentially more come together and can be described as a business model. So the challenge is to present these business models and to create a robust business model that will actually work, because look at that stat. 75% of private sector firms just stay and only employ one person, namely the person who started it. Not only that, but you know, we need that decision to say, no, I really want to drive this business. Now, let me be very clear. There's absolutely nothing wrong in saying, no, I don't want to employ anybody. I just want to achieve a certain level of lifestyle or whatever it might be. There's absolutely nothing wrong with that. But if you do want to grow, you have to take that conscious decision to grow. Because here's the bad news, a heck of a lot of startups fail. And one of the reasons why they fail is that they have an idea and they just go for it. Those who are successful, however, were able to come up basically with a plan B. So things aren't working out. We've stopped. We've identified what has been going wrong. We know that there is a market for what we have to offer because we've tested it, and we are able to pivot and change from where we thought we would take our business to an area of potentially greater success. So, flipping heck, doom and gloom, Jed. Well, no, I don't have the answer, but I certainly have part of an answer over the next couple of hours. So there are some specific questions that we really need to challenge ourselves with. And I'm going to introduce you to a concept called the business model canvas. And this canvas really helps us to think about the hypotheses, think about the assumptions that we're making. To achieve a particular successful business, we are making some assumptions. Well, let's test those assumptions and see whether or not the market agrees with us that there is something that we can deliver value into. And then, of course, having tested it, make sure that people agree that our solution is better than others. Because if we find, and I'll show you a video a bit later on of a situation where somebody said, actually, we had this idea, we've now changed, we've now pivoted, we've now moved our idea because the evidence from the marketplace didn't support our original idea. So what that then says is that if we change setting and say, if you were charged in a sort of a legal sort of a way with planning to grow a successful business, is there sufficient evidence to be able to convict you? So in this particular situation, we want to be convicted. We want to be found guilty. Yeah, we are planning to build a really successful business. Here's what we've done that gives us a fantastic chance of creating a successful business. So the development then of that idea says, it's not necessarily with a technical skill that we have, an interest, a passion, a belief that we've been talking about already. It's not a question of whether you can do something. It's a question of whether it should be delivered. Yeah, should your product or service be built, not whether it can or not. And again, just to hammer home this point, it's all about the evidence. It's all about experimenting. It's getting into the marketplace, getting out of the building, getting away from your desk or kitchen table, wherever you're operating from, and trying to speak with people. Now, clearly, with the COVID situation at the moment, this getting out and talking with people is ever so slightly harder to do, but where there's a will, you can hopefully do it. The point is, try and get that evidence and present it back to, whether it's a partner, a life partner, a business partner, other people. What do they think is the strength or otherwise of the evidence that you've managed to gather? So, any questions about that lot? Answer came there, none. Clear as mud, Jed. Fantastic. You'll be pleased to know that I'm not going to do all the talking. There will be time for exercises and burpees and calisthenics and all that kind of good stuff in a moment. I reckon it's 3 o'clock. So why don't we have 5 minutes of stretching, tea, letting the dog out, and we shall resume at 3:05, please, guys. I reckon it's smack on 3 o'clock. So 3:05, and we shall resume then. So see you in a moment. Having gone through and started to look at some of the characteristics of successful entrepreneurs, and some of the requirements really to test and gather as much evidence to give us as much confidence as we can that our business idea is up to snuff, is valuable. What I want to do is to introduce you to this idea of using the business model canvas to demonstrate that you have a robust business model. What I'm going to do is I'm going to introduce you to this book, Business Model Generation, and I recommend it, and because what it's trying to do is it's trying to give you the opportunity to come up with, to innovate in terms of how you can deliver value to your chosen markets. And fundamental to this is having a mindset that is consistent with that of a starter. Now, some of you are startups, and some of you have been in business for some time. Doesn't matter. We're still striving to identify opportunities and react positively to those opportunities. And the way that this model works is to say, well, okay, then what we're going to do is we're going to innovate. Innovation was definitely one of the entrepreneurial traits that we spoke of right at the beginning of today. And why is Starbucks there in terms of innovation? Well, one of the reasons is that they decided that they needed more innovation. And so they hired a former vice president from Google to help them with the process of innovation. So we come up, we identify opportunities, we innovate and build something to be able to test it. And the classic issue around testing is bullets, not cannonballs. What on earth is he talking about now? Well, you think of the relative cost, the expense of bullets compared to cannonballs. Cannonballs far more expensive than bullets. So the testing that you're going to do is relatively cheap, relatively low cost, and you're going to fire bullets, the equivalent of bullets, as it were, into the markets that you want to operate in, to see whether or not what you have developed, your idea, the value that you would like to present to the market, is something that people will actually buy. Once they have started to say yes, then we can invest and start to use the cannonballs and sort of the marketing activity and use some of the money that we've got available, because we're spending money in areas that we are confident we will receive a return from, as opposed to just going for it and saying, okay, then we're going to do this marketing, that marketing, and loads of activity, and say, we now found that there isn't a market at all. So having built and having tested, we then say, okay, then, has it worked? What lessons do we learn as a consequence of that testing? And the point is that you may have a technical skill, cue hammer, and the old challenge is quite often the fact that if you know how to hammer a nail, then strangely enough, you treat every situation as though it requires a hammer. So you say, well, Jed, I've only got certain skills. Well, that's true. But if you identify the opportunity that doesn't involve, let us say, the use of a hammer, what are you going to do about it? You can pass it up, absolutely. Or you can think, well, how I know that there is this opportunity. How might I acquire resources to be able to take advantage of that opportunity that I have uncovered? So what I want to do is to, by way of a few videos, introduce you to this idea of the business model canvas, which enables you, encourages you, requires you to test your business model and come up with loads of variations in order to improve the chances that you happen upon one that is going to be successful and lead to success for you. So let us have a look at this first video.
This is the story of Beth, her friend Carl, and an idea they believed could become a great business. It's the story of how they succeeded, and if you're an entrepreneur or anyone with a great idea, it could easily be your story too. But let's begin at the beginning. See, even if you have a great idea, success is far from assured. That's because for every great idea that has shaped our world, there are thousands of seemingly great ideas that have flopped. In order to succeed, a great business idea needs a great business model, and they're not the same thing. Once your idea meets the world, it will meet customers. If they don't care about the problem your idea solves for them, it's game over. But even if customers love your value proposition, you can fail if your business model is not scalable and financially sustainable. You'll need to find reliable channels to reach and acquire your customers. You'll need to build an infrastructure that won't collapse as your business begins to grow. Failing to do just one of these things can mean death to your business, however great your idea is. That's why your first work is to search for the right business model, to map this world of challenges so it can be tamed and organized, allowing you to explore it, manage it, and plan for it. What if there was a tool that could help you with this challenge, simply and visually? A tool that makes it easier to stress test your ideas, track your progress, and avoid breaking the bank along the way. What if it was possible to design and test business models in a way that gives your idea a better shot at rising to the level of the great businesses that are shaping our world? It is, and though the journey for these guys, and for you, won't be a walk in the park, all you'll need is your creativity, willingness to work, and passion for your idea. We'll give you the rest.
Okay, so having introduced the idea of this business model canvas, what we're striving to do is to ensure that the idea that we've got is sufficiently robust, that it is innovative, and will be able to cope with some of the stresses and strains that we find not only in the COVID world, but also hopefully post-COVID. So the point then is this, if you were operating before COVID, you had a business model. It might have looked like that. So what are we now going to do as we strive to develop, strive to come out and survive in this current environment? We might recreate what we've got, or alternatively, we could build what it is that we really want. So the implicit question there, of course, is what is it that we really want? So with that in mind, let me introduce you to the next video and in the same series, and we'll start to get into how to use the business model canvas.
This is the business model canvas. It's just what Beth and Carl will need to craft a powerful business model, and it can do the same for you. Let's dive in and see how it works. There are 9 essential building blocks that make up any business model. When you get all 9 blocks working together, you'll have answered the fundamental questions any business model must solve. We'll start here with customer segments. These are all the people or organizations for which you're creating value. For each segment, you have a specific value proposition. These are the bundles of products and services that create value for your customers. Channels describe through which touchpoints you're interacting with customers and delivering value. The customer relationships outline the types of relationships you're establishing with your customers and how you're acquiring and retaining them. Pricing mechanisms through which your business model captures value are documented under revenue streams. The key resources show which assets are indispensable in your business model, so you can describe the infrastructure you need to create, deliver, and capture value. The key activities show which things you need to be able to perform well. The key partners show who can help you leverage your business model, since you won't own all key resources yourself, nor will you perform all key activities. And once you understand your business model's infrastructure, you'll also have an idea of its cost structure. Any business model can be mapped this way: 9 building blocks working to reinforce and strengthen each other. But before you make a model for yourself, it helps to see what a breakthrough business model looks like in action. Like this one. Low-cost airlines revolutionized air travel thanks to their disruptive business model. Let's first look at their value proposition. A low-cost airline offers ultra-cheap flights to their main customer segment, budget travelers, by adopting a no-frills policy. And this leads to additional revenue streams, because customers pay for their ticket and additional fees on items like food and drink, priority boarding, and luggage. The airlines save even more money through their choice of channels, selling only through call centers and the internet, making for efficient, if not always convenient, customer relationships that are automated and often impersonal. Okay, that covers the right side of the canvas, the part everyone can see. The left side of the canvas is what's going on backstage. Like their choice of key resources, they reduce maintenance and training costs by using a single aircraft model for the whole fleet. And they only fly to cheap airports where it's cost efficient to land, or where they even get paid to touch down. Planes that do land have quick turnarounds, so they get back in the air earning money as quickly as possible. And they form key partnerships with others in the travel industry, like car rental, hotel, and insurance companies. Finally, under cost structures, all maintenance, training, airport, and call center costs are trimmed to their lowest levels. All of these pieces working together make their fares almost impossible for traditional airlines to compete with. There's nothing superior about these airlines except their business models. They're reaching an entirely new segment of travelers out of reach for traditional airlines. Cutting out costs is pretty exciting, right? But wait, just because it's successful for discount airlines doesn't mean it will work for your idea. Luckily, the business model canvas allows you to iterate many models and test them quickly. Let's get started with your own business idea.
So the point there, guys, is that we have many different iterations of our business model. And I can't stress that too much. Point is, we're trying to guard against the danger of coming up with a business idea and an implicit business model, way of delivering value to our chosen target market. And then we go for it. And if we have a look at the statistics associated with the chances of success for just that your first business model is going to lead to the success that you seek, you will be amazed at the numbers that can be remarkably low. The chances are really low. So let's just have a breakdown of the canvas. What we have is the customer segments that we are interested in. And the more precise that we can be about the type of customer that we want to do business with, the better. Why should they buy from us? That's the value proposition. What type of relationship do we want? Is it going to be a one-to-many? Quite often in a business-to-consumer setting, it can be one-to-many through call centers and the like. Or if it's a more personal service, it might be one-to-one. And how are we going to get access to our target customer segments? So those are the value areas that we're trying to deliver. So how on earth are we going to deliver that value? So what is it that we have to be fantastic at? We're not going to do everything. What is it that we are going to be really great at? With whom are we going to partner in those areas that we're not fantastic at, but are still important to building a successful business? And what are the critical resources, time, money, skills, intellectual property maybe, that we need in order to create a successful business? And then we get to the two financial areas, the potential revenue streams and the costs associated with the business. So there will be many iterations. The point is that if you think of it as getting it right first time, that means that you have to get those 9 blocks of the business model canvas right first time to deliver the value that you seek. The chances of just multiplying those out are really small of getting them all right. So we need to iterate, we need to come up with a number of different models and see which one is best. Let me continue with the videos.
You can think of a business model like a story of how your enterprise will create, deliver, and capture value. And like a story, it can be one you've heard over and over before. For instance, you can start with what most people are fixated on, the value proposition. Travel for retirees. Then decide whom you can sell it to. Yep, boomers. Sketch in how you'll get it to them. Okay, a website. And how that will generate revenue. Sure, sales fees. You'll make it easy and automated. Next, you figure out what key resources you need to offer all that, like a reliable website and brand recognition. Carl's thinking his key activities will be marketing, website, and maintenance, and then partners will do the booking. And finally, where your costs will come from. Sales, marketing, platform development, all that will cost you. There you go, your first model. But don't expect a medal or a breakthrough. Predictable models can work, but rarely give you a competitive advantage, so don't fall in love with your first idea. To compete in a world where the best model wins, you'll need to think harder and explore alternatives. For example, prototype a model where you give away your value proposition for free. This will instantly change everything. You might not find this model realistic, but exploring it will force you to think hard about potential alternatives. As an entrepreneur, you're thinking of your model 24/7. Now you have a tool to structure your ideas as quick prototypes to consider with your team. Who knows, you might wind up with a disruptive model that changes an entire industry, like Skype with its freemium model, or Nespresso, which became a multi-billion-dollar business by locking customers into purchasing high-margin espresso capsules. In fact, understanding innovative or simply successful business models in other industries can be a great place to start getting to your breakthrough. There's no right or wrong way to do it, just 3 rules to start with. First, focus on the business model, not just your product, technology, or service. Second, don't fall in love with your first models. The best models are built on clever, unexpected elements, and that comes from creating many less obvious versions. Which leads to the third rule: iterate rapidly and test your models early, in the real world. How do you do that? Don't worry, guys. We're about to learn all about the real world beyond our canvas.
Okay, are there any questions so far? Yes, Clarissa.
Well, it was more of an observation. Because it changed the business model and made the value free, I've never thought about it like that. You know, like if what you're offering is free, then how are you going to generate money other ways? So then that kind of creates more ideas about how you're going to create business.
Yeah, yeah. And whatever you do, don't tell your life partner; they'll go nuts. Yeah, absolutely. And it's a really powerful thought exercise. Well, if we gave it away for free, what would we have to do? How would we generate value if they're not actually buying the products or service? So yeah, you're absolutely right. And the whole point here about iterating your business model is that you've got loads of alternatives, which improves the chances of you hitting on one that is going to be really successful and achieve the goals that you have set for yourself. Are there any other questions before I continue? Because we're going to have a little look at a fantastic product. Rachel is on the call at the moment, and if you're really interested in working with Winning Pitch on selling this product into the United Kingdom, please let Rachel know. So there don't appear to be any questions, so just have a butcher's at this, guys.
Take the work out of
We're going to be having a look at the business model canvas for this.
the Hawaii chair.
You know, Tamara, the Hawaii chair wasn't designed just for home. I mean, after all, for some of us, at least 40 hours of our week is spent sitting behind a desk at the office. So to see what office workers think of the Hawaii chair, we sent Erin Lee to work.
Hi, I'm Erin Lee with Perfect USA, and today we've brought the Hawaii chair to a very busy work environment. Let's get some first-time reactions.
Oh my gosh, this is amazing.
That feels great on my abs.
I can really feel this working.
Hawaii chair while answering phones, using the computer, balancing books, or filing paperwork. You can hardly call this work. With the Hawaii chair, it takes the work out of your workday.
If you can sit, you can get fit. The Hawaii chair.
Thanks, Erin Lee.
Right, so how many people would like to be interested in this particular product into the United Kingdom? Clarissa, you've unmuted yourself. You first off the blocks, as it were.
That's not for the office. That chair's not for the office.
Well, we shall see. But the point is, let's have a look at the canvas and see what it might look like. So this is a business model canvas, and all I'm going to do is just to take you through some ideas that we might have to create a robust business model for the Hawaii chair. So what we're going to do is we're going to say, well, actually, Clarissa, we are going to go for female office workers, helping them to keep fit. And we might also sell in sort of a B2B fashion to large corporates around the piece in terms of keeping their employees really healthy. So if these are our two prime business segments, you know, what would the value proposition look like? Well, add the workout, okay. Keeping fit whilst you're at work, absolutely. From an employee point of view, hopefully improved productivity through people actually being present, dare I say it, in the office. Let's leave the current troubles aside for one moment, and ideally reducing the amount of sickness costs that exists. Okay, so how then are we going to get our product to our target audience? Well, we may well go through some office furniture distributors for the B2B and the sort of retail outlets for the B2C. There is a question, of course, here as to whether or not office workers, female or otherwise, would actually pay for their own office kit, their own office chair, but we'll leave that aside for the time being. And what type of relationship do we want with these guys? Well, with the office workers, it's going to be sort of a one-to-many, a mass relationship, whereas with the corporates, it's going to be certainly one-to-one, sort of account-based activity. So that's the value that we're striving to deliver into this marketplace. So now what we're going to say is, okay, then, what do we have to be fantastic at? Well, we need to be able to construct it, to assemble the chair, to get it working. We need an ability to get into large corporates, to be able to sell to large organizations. And actually, we need to physically be able to get the kit to customers, whether they're end consumers or whether they are large corporates. Okay, so what help from our partners are we able to access? Well, there's the ultimate license owner, the Hawaii Chair in the United States. We might be able to work through trade associations, and there may well be exhibitions and marketing agencies that we can work with to be able to access our target audience. What resources do we require? Well, if we can't buy a license, if we can't get a license for this chair, then actually we are nowhere, aren't we? So obviously the license becomes really important. And any contacts that we've got in a particular sector that we can leverage becomes really crucial. In terms of costs, therefore, I've talked about license, so we need to be able to pay the license holder for that agreement. And we need to be able to assemble it and sell, access the target audience that is in our sites. In terms of revenue streams, combination, we can sell, absolutely, but there may well be accessories, if you will, covers, spares, and you could even think about maybe a repair service. Maybe there could be a rental of these chairs rather than out-and-out sales. There could be rental as well. So we start to get a sense of, and you'll notice that on this canvas, this electronic canvas, the comments are placed really in sort of a post-it note fashion. And post-it notes can be really great, really helpful, especially if you're working with others on your business model canvases, to put ideas up and take them down and iterate. The crucial thing, of course, is to be able to record each iteration. Are there any questions about this fantastic once-in-a-lifetime opportunity that Rachel is waiting for any of you to ask her for more details about? Are there any questions about that? Okay, so I'm just going to give a couple more examples, and then we will get you to do some work rather than me nattering it all the time. So if any of you have ever come across the Goo Puds, the critical customer segment that was really important in their business is people who absolutely adore chocolate. They're not going for the cheapest chips option. They are relatively premium products, but clearly they need access to the chocolate and the ability to convert it and make those delicious puds. Similarly, if you have a look at the computer web services that Amazon has developed, really there has to be a partnership with the retail side of the business in order to build the computer infrastructure that allows people then to sell their products via Amazon's own website. And that will then enable it to access a far greater number of customer segments and drive revenue. So one of the videos that I've just shown you mentioned Nespresso. And the final example of a business model canvas that I want to show you, just to give you a sense of, it's not War and Peace that we're writing out on these canvases. It is sort of post-it note type stuff. Just want you to have a look at this video that talks about the canvas for
Okay,
Nespresso.
as a first example, let's define the business model of Nespresso. What's the value proposition of Nespresso? Is to offer the best coffee at home, as good as the coffee in the best cafe in Roma. That's the idea. And this value proposition consists of mainly of two different products. The first one is the Nespresso machine, the other one are the capsules. They have two different distribution strategies for reaching the customers. First, for the machines, they use the retailers for reaching the households and eventually the businesses, and this generates a revenue coming from the machine sales. But most of this revenue goes directly to the machine manufacturers, which are key partners for Nespresso since the beginning. For the Nespresso capsules, the story is a little bit different. They use their own channels. They use the mail order for reaching the customers, or the website, or you can also find now, much more recently, the Nespresso stores that you have in most of the big cities in the world. And those channels is a key resource for Nespresso because they have this ability to reach the customers through those direct distribution channels. When you bought a machine, you have to come back to Nespresso for buying the capsule. So it means that you have a kind of lock-in strategy if you want. So it means it's much more difficult for you to change your company if you want to buy those capsules, because you have to buy the capsules of Nespresso to put those capsules in the machines. And you can reinforce this using, for example, the Nespresso Club for keeping the relationship with the customers. And you can have this kind of strategy because also you have on your resource side the patterns. And based on this, you have the repetitive sales coming from those capsules, which is the main revenue for Nespresso. This is for the right-hand side, the value side of the business model. On the left-hand side, means on the backstage, if you want, you have different resources and activities. One of them is the coffee. You can reach the coffee, and so it means that you have some partnership with the coffee growers, which is normal for the Nestlé business. And when you buy those coffee, you have to put that inside the capsules. So it means that Nespresso want to keep this manufacturing activity. So it means you have one of the main key activities, which is the production, and they have the production facilities able to produce millions of capsules per day, and it has a cost. You have some other activities which is related to the marketing and branding activity and branding resources, which has a cost. And the last activity is the distribution or the logistic, because you have to reach those customers with this direct distribution. So it means that you have the third activity, which is the distribution activity, which has a cost, which is the cost related to this logistics activity. This is the business model of Nespresso.
Okay, are there any questions about that Nespresso canvas. Shirley, you're unmuted. I don't know whether you have a question.
Oh, no, sorry, I'll mute.
It's quite all right. It's quite all right. So you'll recall that there were two colors. This is advanced stuff. Two colors of Post-its, and they can be really helpful. Different color Post-its can be really helpful if you've got 2 or possibly 3 target customer segments, just to make it really clear which partners are associated with which customer segments, what the value propositions are. Or you could have, if you've got 3 target customer groups, you could have 3 separate canvases. It's entirely up to you. If it were me, I tend to try and get 1 customer segment per canvas when you do this. But initially, if there are no questions, what I'd like to do is to suggest that if you go to the handout that Rachel has kindly emailed to you all, on page 6, there are a series of questions that can trigger completion of the particular box, one of the 9 boxes. And then on page 9, page 7, there is a blank canvas. What I would suggest is, if you can access that, I don't think it's editable. So if you can print off that 1 page, or if you can just make notes around the 9 blocks, then just start to sketch out what a business model canvas might look like for your business. If you want to know the order within in which to do it, the Word document that was emailed to you on page 2 suggests that we really start to have a look. You can either start with the value proposition and then the customer segments that we're targeting, or you could actually start with the customer segments and then go to the value proposition. It's those 2 that are done first, and then you start to think about the channels and the customer relationships, and then you flip over to the left-hand side of the canvas. So what I want to do, guys, is give you about 10 minutes just to have a go at maybe your first, it may not be, business model canvas, and see where you get to. If you have any questions, either shout out or pop them into the chat function of Zoom. So have a go, guys, and see where we get to. What we'll do, guys, also after the webinar is email you. When I say we, Rachel has kindly agreed to email you an electronic version of the canvas, so that you can actually start to type stuff if you don't have Post-its or would prefer not to write out on the blank canvas. So you will get an electronic version. towards the end of at the end of the session. Are there any questions? Tell you what, Rebecca, those fish are very soothing. You're all squirreling away, creating your canvas. I do find page 6 of the handout really helpful. Some of those trigger questions will, I think, really help you. Last couple of minutes, guys, for your initial canvas ideas.
Jed, sorry.
Yes.
Quick question. If I wanted to use, say, going on podcasts and things to get more audience, more engagement with people, would that come with the channels or key partners?
The broadcast platform that you would use in order to distribute the podcast is probably going to be under the partner.
No, I would go on other people's podcasts, not my own.
Oh, okay. In that case, those podcast publishers, for want of a better term, would be partners.
Okay, thank you.
You're not, they're not customers. And the mechanism, you're correct, the mechanism by which you're getting access to your target audience would be podcasts, but you need to partner with the podcast publisher, for want of a better term. So they would be in partners.
Cool, thank you.
Pleasure. How are we doing, guys? Are there any other questions? Clarissa at the end of this session about a question regarding mentors, but if you wanted to hang around, if you do have any specific questions about your first canvas, or subsequently, by all means, hang around and you can have a bit of a natter. I think the point is, though, that the chances are that the canvas that you've created now looks remarkably like the business that you either have got or have been thinking about. And as you will recall, the power of this is about the iteration and the thinking about other ways in which you will deliver value to your customers or your customer segments. So this is just a starter for 10, as it were. We really need to get into the detail over the coming days, weeks, and the like. Okay, if there are no further questions, I shall just pause with that assertion. Nobody is shouting. Okay, fantastic. Okay. So page 6 of the handout provides these questions, which are really good trigger questions for you to consider and develop your canvas. But this is a team game, and one of the challenges that some of you, I'm sure, are facing is that you've set up your business and it's just you. So if you can, try and develop these canvases either with somebody or create some canvases and then present them, that sounds very formal, to a life partner, a business person, whoever it might be, just to as you talk it through, ask them, does this make sense, and see what feedback they get. Okay, so are there any further questions? You're all raring to go, raring to get your canvases numbers 2, 3, 4, and 5 up and running. I can just tell. Okay. So what where we've got to then is the use of this canvas, because we're increasing the chances of identifying a successful business model. But the point is that it is quite likely that you will have a range of ideas. And what I want to do in 5 minutes' time is to share with you a technique by which to evaluate those different ideas. So what I'll do is let's have a break for 5 minutes. It's 5 to 4. We will resume at 4 o'clock. And we'll get into the, as it were, the last section of this presentation. which is around evaluating the ideas and how can we fine-tune and improve the chances of getting a great canvas and hence a great business, which is ultimately investable. Okay, guys, 5 minutes and we'll see you back at 4 o'clock. Hi, Peter. Welcome back.
Hi.
So how long have you been in business, Peter, for yourself?
Since the 1st of August this year. So,
are you having fun?
Fun. Now, that's the interesting concept. It's very intense, is what I would say at the moment. So,
okay.
I've got a book full of clients now. All I have to do is make sure I perform for those clients, and hopefully everything will be okay.
What could possibly go wrong?
I just need to make sure I can administer this at the back end as well as I can talk the talk at the front end.
Well, it's interesting because there is a question that says, how do you add most value to the business? And if you answer that question, you know, by delivering work or by getting work and the like, quite quickly you get to the point, well, at what point do I buy in support, maybe for admin, for example? I suspect it's too early in the cycle just at the moment, but keep that question reasonably close to the front of your mind. You know, how soon can I get to a position where I can comfortably afford somebody to take away the stuff that is basically reducing the amount of time I've got to sell and deliver and add real value to my business.
Absolutely.
And it ought to be sooner rather than later.
Okay.
Don't tell my business partner that, because I've sort of outsourced my finances to her. Shh, it'll just be our little secret. But you know,
maybe early in the new year. That's sort of what I'm sort of thinking, but we'll see.
Yeah. So you know, you develop a profit forecast, stroke cash flow forecast, and say, okay, then I need to be able to generate, you know, be working for, I don't know, 10 days, 12 days a month to be able to afford and to have gone past the break-even point when I'm paying £100, £200, £500, whatever it is, to the person who's going to help me.
Yeah. Well, my wife works for one of my clients, so maybe I'll rob her and she can come and work for me.
Okay. is an option, clearly, but you know, respectfully, is she the best person for what you need to have done? Just I ask that.
Potentially, but an independent person will probably be better.
And yeah, I mean, I work with a couple of family businesses, husband and wife, and whilst they're successful, they acknowledge the challenge of crudely living and working with each other pretty much 24/7, and it can be a challenge, shall we say. I shall say no more. I fear the ice on which I am currently treading is remarkably thin. Rebecca's nodding. I tell you what, I'm just loving the fish and those air bubbles. They're very therapeutic. I think they're fantastic.
Now it beats one of the usual screensavers, doesn't it?
Well, it absolutely does. It absolutely does. Right, are we pretty much all here? Because we sort of need to get going, and I've been wobbling on, and so we're well and truly after the 4 o'clock witching hour. Okay, so the business model canvas and the number of iterations that you've got, the number of ideas, the number of new customer segments that you will have been able to identify, then say, well, okay, I've got these loads of these ideas. Which one am I going to go for? And what we can start to do is to use something that looks a wee bit like this. And what we have are, strangely enough, a number of quadrants. How many quadrants? That would be 4. And what we're trying to ask ourselves is, on the x-axis, how difficult or easy would a particular customer market segment be to access? And the y-axis is, what is the potential, typically economic, but not entirely so. What is the potential for that particular market? And as you can see, we've got the gold mines, which we like the look of. Moonshots, a bit risky maybe, great potential, but boy, is it hard work. The low potential and high challenge, really, and the quick wins. And I was chatting with a business who'd used this technique last week. And the managing director had told this guy to have a look at the various opportunities of which they were aware. In particular, one that is very time sensitive because it's associated with COVID and the rescue packages, etc. And the MD had made the assumption that this was a substantial opportunity. And he took that opportunity through this exercise, and I'm going to show you now. And it was smack in the middle of the questionable. Why on earth would you do that? Well, the MD said so. Well, yeah, it doesn't sort of work like that. Because, of course, if you start to use resource bottom right, you're not using that resource for ideas that are top left or even bottom left. So how this works is to say, okay, I'm going to evaluate and ask these questions of each of these opportunities that I've got. So from the potential, we're looking at reasons to buy. Why would people buy our product? And I'll give you the reference for this technique in a few moments' time. So why would they buy? How large is the business? Is the market? Clarissa mentioned the market right at the beginning of today. Is there a big market? Is there a small market? And can we actually make money? Is it economically viable to access that particular market? And on the right-hand side, we look at the challenge. We say, well, okay, then what are the obstacles to delivering into this marketplace, accessing this marketplace? How long is it going to take to actually get the cash register to ring, the time to revenue? I was chatting with one guy and he said, oh yes, we're very proudly, we work with a lot of local authorities. Excellent. And how long does it take them, once they know about you and that you exist, to actually sign on the dotted? Oh, about 9 months. Okay, now let me be very clear. I'm not saying he shouldn't go for that local authority market. What I am saying is he needs another market to fill in whilst the local authorities actually make a decision. And that was pre-COVID. So that's how quickly is the cash register going to ring? And how long does it take them to make a decision? And ultimately, what does the competitive environment look like? And a quick and dirty use of this technique might look like this. Okay, so we're dotting it out. So, okay, overall, yeah, the potential feels about sort of the middle. So sort of middle for the potential. And then we score like this. And so, okay, then the challenges seem to be about there. All right, so this particular product into the crime scene investigator evidence piece, it doesn't appear to be fantastic. And what we do is we just map the ideas that we've got and say, well, we probably ought to be having a look at, top left, maybe the air crash investigator. That's very dramatic, isn't it? But we probably ought not to be spending much time on the fire service or the scene of crime opportunity. And what I will do, I've got a more detailed spreadsheet which I will send to Rachel, and she'll pass on to you, which came from this book, Where to Play by Gruber and Tal. This is where this particular technique can be found. So have a look at that. Are there any questions about how this works, this attractiveness map? Stunned silence. Fantastic. In which case, can I invite you to have a butcher's at pages 8 and 9 on the handout, and just start to take one of the ideas that you developed and that you looked at for your business model canvas, and just think about, well, okay then, just comparison of one. How would you currently score the potential and the challenge for one of the customers segments that you have identified? So just have a quick go at that, ladies and gents. Okay, how are we doing? Anyone got any gold mines? What do we think? Any gold mines in the room? No gold mines. So where are most of your opportunities? Which segment, which quadrant do you think your current?
I think one of mine came up as a gold mine, but I'm not sure.
Okay.
I'll go through it again.
Yeah. So you would then evaluate it in front of, well, not necessarily in front of somebody else, but just run it through. Just check my rationale. Okay. We have one gold mine. Anybody else got a gold mine?
I also have a gold mine.
Excellent. Really? and that's the point, guys. When you get out and test your ideas, it will validate what you're validating is your assessment of, this really is a gold mine. Okay, without telling other people what it is, then obviously, but that's what we're striving to do. Okay, are there any questions before we move on? No, Jed, get on with it. Okay, so we're back in the land of the business model canvas, and what I'm going to do is to share with you a few ways to add a bit of substance to the canvases that you either have at the moment or are going to have. So let's have a look and talk about these 4 areas. So first one, cue video.
Remember the chaos your idea faced before you made the canvas? Well, you've tamed some of it by mapping the elements that are mostly within your control. But the world out there is full of threats, constraints, and opportunities beyond your control. They create the environment in which you'll design and build your business model, and in which your business will fight for survival every day. Just because you can't control these factors doesn't mean you can't and shouldn't account for them in your model. Doing so will help prepare your model for threats, ready it for changing legal constraints, and prime it to jump on innovations. Let's see how mapping the environment will affect the Boomer travel agency model. On the right, you'll map market forces, everything related to the customer segments you've selected. Ask yourself, which other segments are there? Which ones are the most lucrative? Looks like Beth's discovered a segment of boomers with a range of disposable wealth. You could ask, which segments are growing and what do they most want? And why might your customers resist? Okay, good. Boomers have trouble adapting to new technology. Now above your canvas, map key trends. Are new technologies about to undercut your value proposition or supercharge it? What regulations are coming up? How is society at large shifting? Right, Carl, rising medical costs could weigh heavily on your customers. Now to the left, map industry forces. Who are your main competitors? What advantages do their business models provide? Could they crush you? Your industry may already have a dominant competitor, but ask yourself, where are their weaknesses? Can you disrupt them? What might happen as suppliers and partners evolve, or don't? Better to know now that the travel field is crowded and volatile, right, Carl? Finally, below your canvas, map macroeconomic forces. How is the global economy doing? Markets may be in a state of rampant uncertainty. How available is capital? Venture capitalists may be taking few risks. How well is the infrastructure developed in the market you are doing business in? Sure, many boomers are experiencing a decline in living standards. Now you've mapped your environment, full of threats, opportunities, and constraints. What do? Use the map, of course, to make your business model more responsive. Looking at industry forces on the left side of your canvas, ask, does your model have a competitive edge today? Tomorrow? Good thinking, Beth. That dominant competitor could be a threat. Looking at key trends on the top of your canvas, ask, is your model prepared for emerging trends? Okay, if rising medical costs encourage overseas treatment, that could be an opportunity for your travel agency. On the right for market forces, is your model in line with evolving customer needs? Sure, if your customers are resistant to the internet, you're right to rethink delivery through a website. And below for macroeconomic forces, how will your model adjust to macroeconomic shifts? Yes, Beth. Unfortunately, travel is becoming a luxury that a growing number of your customers can't afford. But don't be overwhelmed by these elements. Asking and answering these questions will help make your business model better suited to its environment and that much more likely to succeed. Now you're ready to start testing your model in the real world.
Okay, so what we're talking about now is probably to the top and bottom and to the sides of the canvas, starting to think about these 4 areas. And just trying to improve the robustness of the ideas that you feel you are best suited to deliver, and that will generate the returns, the objectives that you seek to generate. Are there any questions about these 4 areas? Okay, well, you had your chance, because what I'd like to do is to just sketch out some ideas on page 10 of the handout. So, what are some of the trends? How might technology affect your business? You can read as well as I can. But just ask yourself these questions. Start to pop down a few bullet points that you may wish to flesh out later on. So just, I'll give you a few moments just to think through each of these areas. We've talked about dear old Richard Branson and the way that he has influenced the aviation sector. These are well-known people who are able to effect change, typically within maybe a whole industry or just in a particular segment. So, for example, Anita Roddick was hugely influential in challenging the use of inappropriate chemicals, etc., and testing on animals and stuff like that. So there are various influential people that in most industries, maybe not all, but maybe it could be the chairman of a trade association. I think the lady's called Minette. Is it Batters or Butters? Who is the head of the National Farmers Union, and she's hugely influential in the farming community. So it isn't necessarily particularly well known outside of that industry, but within the industry, within a trade association, within maybe the editor of a particular trade mag can be really quite influential. So it's that type of idea. Does that make sense, Hazel?
Yeah, is it in the market that you're going into? Is it in...
Typically.
Yeah. Okay, yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. Are there any other questions? Oh,
not sure it's a question as such, but
okay.
Up until recently, I might have been in my own little bubble thinking about what's happening with the EU and new regulations and things, thinking that's not going to affect me. But I've just gone through all the government site, and there's a huge page that's huge list of things that are going to potentially. I'm not a huge exporter, but I do buy materials from wherever and things. But as I say, I try to keep things fairly local. But just the rules and regulations or rules and accreditations or things, looking at trademarks and intellectual property. Just that sort of, that little nugget potentially has quite big ramifications.
Yes, and therefore, arguably, that's increased the challenge associated with maybe a particular type of product that you're producing that uses stuff from the EU, or maybe a particular end market that you might be wanting to sell into. So we're not going to go over the Brexit arguments, but that might suggest that you at least initially, you focus in the UK, where in quotes it's easier to do business than maybe going outside of the UK, at least until things have settled down. So there might be a timing issue here, is another issue that you might like to think about.
Yeah, certainly.
Yeah. If you ever come across the Economist magazine, on a quarterly basis, they publish what they term the Technology Quarterly, which, bizarrely enough, every quarter, is their take on new technology and trends associated with technology. And that can be quite a useful way into thinking about how might technology help me or hinder me. Some of you may well be using Microsoft Office 365, and there is a huge number of apps embedded within 365 that can really help a small business, well, any business, but particularly a small business. Just join the dots, automated email planning, project planning, a bit of a CRM. So there are a lot of potential sources and ways in which technology can assist. Oh, and by the way, Rachel, can you remind me about Digital Boost? If you've not gone to sleep already. I think she's gone to sleep. I will at the next. I'll send you a source of information which you may find helpful as well. Okay, about digital stuff. Okay, so we need to think about the trends. And what we then need to do also is to think about, well, okay, that's fine. These canvases are fine, but where is this? Where does this sit? Where do these canvases sit in relation to what it is that I want to achieve? What it is that we want to achieve? And I'm using the term vision. On the 17th of November, Boost is running a workshop on vision and the use of the Orbit tool, which I absolutely love. And it's a really powerful way of thinking about it. And basically, the essence of it is this. Does anybody recognize this picture? Come on, delve back into your
Alice in Wonderland.
Alice in Wonderland. And who? That's not Alice. Who is this?
Cheshire Cat.
Perfect. Well done, Clarissa. Yeah, absolutely. So, with the greatest apologies to Alice in Wonderland, there was a conversation between Alice and the cat. Alice is walking through the woods. She comes to a fork in the tree, in the road, as it were, in the path. And the Cheshire Cat is in a bough of a tree above that fork in the road. And Alice says to the cat, "Which way should I go?" The cat says, "Where do you want to get to?" Alice says, "I don't know." And the cat says, "Well, it doesn't really matter which fork in the road you take then, does it?" So the point is, business model canvas is fantastic, but it has to be overlaid with a sense of where you want to take your business. In 2-3 years' time, where do you want to take this business? And the critical element there is this game. Does anyone know by what process you would use to work out which rod is going to give you angling success? What's the process? How do you work it out? Just shout out, guys.
Start with the fish.
Absolutely. Start with the end in mind. This fish is where you want to get to, and then you go backwards and work out which rod you're going to have to use in order to get to the fish. And that, guys, is absolutely crucial in developing these sort of orbit type diagrams. We start in the outer rim in 3 years' time. This is where I want to take my business. In this particular example, sales of 2.2 million, and we're only doing 500,000 at the moment. And then we start to think, well, okay, if we need to do 2.2 in 3 years' time, what do we need to have done in tier 2? what do we need to have done in year one, and how does that compare to where we are at the moment. So this visioning orbit is really powerful, but you've got to start with the end in mind, guys. You've got to start and think about these various ideas and these topics in terms of funding, in terms of new product development and innovation. We talked about that already. Do you have the skills? How are you going to acquire the skills? Without wishing to be too politically incorrect and rather crass, unfortunately, there are a lot of very skilled people who are now looking for jobs. This is a buyer's market. If you think that you need access to specific skills that you don't have, now is the time to acquire them. Where are we going to go? Oh, look, strategic partnerships. I keep banging on about these things. It's a particular, it's 1 out of the 9 blocks in a business model canvas, and it's a crucial element in the visioning orbit. So much so that I put that, crucial. So, 17th of November, if you are unfamiliar with the visioning orbit, and there is a workshop on that specific topic. But the business model canvas and the orbit need to come together and be aligned with each other. Are there any questions about that? Stunned silence. Okay. Next one I want to challenge you about is these power-ups. There are things that you can do to improve the robustness and the viability, the sustainability of your business. They're called power-ups. I'm going to go through each one. We talked about Nespresso. We saw a video about it. How can we hook in a customer so that it is less likely that they might switch or go somewhere else? So that's the first one. How can we generate recurring revenues? So, for example, I don't know, Clarissa, wellness, and it might be a transactional arrangement that you have with some of your clients, but can they buy crudely a series of 12 sessions or whatever it might be? How can you generate those sort of recurring revenues in much the same way? I'm not suggesting wellness is associated with printer ink, but you sort of get the idea. Yeah. How can you generate recurring revenue? Dell had a fantastic way of driving its business. It cut out the middleman. It said, okay, then what we're going to do is we're going to offer computers via our website. And when you have configured your computer, you pay us, then we'll make it for you. Perfect. So in terms of cash flow, marvelous. The customers give us money. We then go and spend that money. We don't need to use ours. Thank you very much. Great, great power up. How can we go to freemium? How can we challenge the traditional way in which our industry or our segment charges for what it is that we do? Sounds a bit rude, but IKEA getting us to make our own furniture, genius. How can you take cost out of the marketplace? How can you get people to do something that they're prepared to do because they so want the value that you have available to the customers? How can we scale? And digital businesses have a slight advantage here. The marginal cost of 1 to 100 new customers is virtually zero compared to some. So, for example, Hazel, your mindfulness business, it can be hard to scale. There may be ways that you can scale, but first and foremost, you're probably selling your time. In which case, it's there's only one Hazel, as it were. Cue a song. No, shut up, Jed. Don't sing. Whatever you do. And how can you build something that people start to come back to you? And I use the example of Apple because they have their ecosystem, and once you start to use some of their products, you're sort of hooked into using pretty much the rest of them. But for you guys, maybe there are certain add-on consumables that you can sell your customers that only you have the distributorship within the north of England, within England itself. And so they have to come back to you once they really love the products that they are buying from you. Are there any questions about these power-ups? Okay, so we're now on to page 11 of the handbook. So what I want you to do is to not overly think it, but just score your business idea against these 7 power-ups using page 11 in your handbook. So just a couple of minutes, guys, and just see where you think you are at the moment. So you have a particular profile using these power-ups, and these things can change. So over time, just refer back to these areas and start to think, okay, then how can I develop switching costs? How can I develop recurring revenues over time? It's not going to happen overnight. Some of your canvas ideas might lend themselves to having a high score in these power-ups, in which case those might be ever so slightly more attractive. So look at the attractiveness grid to help you think that one out. So are there any questions, guys, before we move on? Answer came there. No? Okay, right. So I've lost my cursor. Flipping heck. What I want to do then is just to finally introduce you to the last video in this series about the use of the canvas.
All right, you've got your model, you made your best guess, it's time to fail. I know it's hard to hear, but even your most promising prototype is pretty certain to fail. Many of your hypotheses are bound to be wrong. Luckily, the canvas makes it easy to adapt, as long as your mistakes are cheap and you act quickly to fix them. See, the only judge of a business model is your future customer. What you've created so far are just hypotheses, guesses that need to be true for your business model to succeed. You have to test these hypotheses. Fail or succeed, learn, then adjust. This process is known as customer development and lean startup. Begin by explicitly stating the most important hypotheses underlying your business model. Okay, you believe that boomers crave custom travel experiences that are tailored to their needs, and that a great brand can overcome a dominant competitor's advantage. Great. Now get out into the world and see if you're right. You can conduct low-cost experiments to test your most important hypotheses. Talk to your distributors, potential partners, and industry experts. But most importantly, talk to your prospective customers. They're likely to have questions and concerns that never crossed your mind. The idea of overseas travel might be stressful for your customers. Money could be a concern, or there might just be a general lack of interest. Yes, learning that overseas travel is not attractive to many of your customers can feel like a major setback. But what you learn in the field can also lead you to unexpected opportunities, like the fact that retirement is cheaper overseas. And this might lead you to modify your original idea in favor of something new. As you gain confidence with your model, you should intensify testing. You'll succeed in some ways, but you'll fail in others because there will always be factors that you can't foresee from your office. If you adapt rapidly and cheaply, you can account for these factors. Solutions like quality assurance for high standards might be easier to implement through retirement village franchises. The more you test, the more you learn, the more your model matures. It's time to start thinking about business models in a revolutionary new way. The era of the fixed business plan is over. To compete today, you need an evolving business model. And if you document your evolution, you can play back your canvases like a flip book, a valuable documentation of your increasingly viable business model. Now your business model is not just a bunch of guesses. You've tested, adapted, and your business model is now likely to succeed. You're ready for the next step. It's time to pitch your model.
Okay, so the focus here then is on testing what you've got and validating and proving to your own satisfaction and potentially to investors, other investors in your business. So how we use this says, well, okay then, we've understood where the risks are, what the hypotheses are. We have some form of fit, we think. We've gone out and tested that fit, and we have verified or not, we've changed. And what the first bit of this then says, we need to really test the assumptions that we are making. So what are the assumptions that we are making? Well, if we have a look at one example of an acne cream, here is a canvas, and what we do is we say, well, okay, then where are the critical assumptions about how this cream might be sold? So, right, well, yeah, the assumption is that people suffer persistent acne, okay, that we can match skin tone, and that doctors, we're assuming that doctors will act as referrers. Fine. If those are the assumptions, that the critical assumptions on which the success of this canvas rests, what we're then going to do is we're going to start to validate whether or not our assumptions are accurate. The hypothesis is that we believe that the doctors are going to be referrers and they will be influential. We set out the success criteria. Well, if we go and speak to doctors and 80% of them say that they do prescribe, then we'll know that we're correct. And we do exactly the same for the other assumptions, the other leaps of faith that we have made. Does that make sense? Are there any questions about that? So here the step is set out, note what the key assumptions, the critical assumptions are in the canvas that you want to pursue, and start to test them. And if I've shared with you the strategizer.com website to download one version of the canvas. You can also download these test cards and learning cards to be very explicit about, we're going to test this, and as a result of those tests, we have learnt this on the right hand side. This might seem a bit bureaucratic, but being really clear about what it is that you are testing and what you have learned from those tests is a really powerful discipline to get into the habit of. So, if there are no questions, what I'd like you to do is to have a butcher's at pages 12 and 13. Probably just on 12 really, just to think about, well, okay then, have a look at the canvas that you've made. What are the critical assumptions, the leaps of faith assumptions that you are making? And those then should then become the focus of some testing that you are going to carry out. So just note those leaps of faith, please, guys. Just a couple of minutes just to think about what the key assumptions are. Get into the final straight, guys. The critical thing here, of course, is that what we're striving to do is to pivot, is to gather evidence. And as Maynard Keynes talked about, you know, when the facts change, I change my mind. So you're gathering evidence. You're not trying to find evidence that supports your original idea. What you're trying to do is to gather evidence to confirm or deny whether you are correct. You ought to be agnostic as to whether or not this particular idea is the right one. Yeah, don't get too wrapped up in this is the idea, so therefore I must find evidence that proves that it is the idea, the best idea. No. What you're doing is you're finding evidence and seeking to understand what evidence that you've got, whether that then means that your canvas is a good idea or not. Okay, so as an example, let me share with you this video of Knox Medical Diagnostics.
When my college roommate, Kimberly, was just 5 years old, she was walking back home from school when suddenly she started wheezing. She could no longer breathe and felt as though something was stabbing at her lungs. The next thing she remembered was waking up at the ER, having had no recollection of what had happened. Asthma is a heterogeneous disorder that affects 34.1 million people in the US alone, costing the healthcare system $56 billion annually. Current treatment methods include having the patient going into the doctor's office and subjectively having to recall the number and severity of attacks over the past few months. However, due to the unpredictable nature of these attacks, many of these severe persistent asthmatics end up being hospitalized, going into the ER, and having to be on prolonged medication courses. Knox has developed an innovative medical device that provides users with objective data to allow for an early intervention prior to the onset of a full-blown attack. Here's the device, and it incorporates basically the spirometry aspect, which provides information regarding lung function, as well as nitric oxide level detection, which provides information regarding the airway tract inflammation. These two technologies are combined onto a spacer, which is a medical device that is used by children in order to help deliver medication. There's also an indicator light over here onto this device, which allows for an early intervention, which would reduce the need for as many of these hospitalizations, ED visits, and in some cases, even death. Our team includes myself, a biomedical engineer, as well as two UCSF PhD candidates and 2 business developers from industry. Our mentors include Alex Dinello, the CEO of a medical device company at Relievant Med Systems, as well as Alan May, the chairman of the Life Science Angels. We began this journey thinking that our medical device would benefit severe asthmatic pediatrics, and that physicians would love to see this inpatient technology brought into the hands of parents at an at-home setting. We initially hypothesized that the customers would be the parents who would pay out of their pockets for this device. So we went out of the building and spoke to as many patients, parents, and clinicians as we could. And we discovered and learned through this process that people who had their asthma under control would not benefit from this device. However, physicians and severe asthmatics would benefit from tracking their asthma severity over time. During this iteration, however, we discovered that parents would not pay out of their pocket. Therefore, we decided to explore long-term healthcare providers such as Kaiser and closed-system hospitals such as the Cleveland Clinic Hospital System, because they would benefit from the reduction of costs due to the reduced number of asthma-related ED visits and hospitalizations. So we went out of the building again and spoke to patient outreach groups, asthma clinics in DC and San Francisco, as well as insurance companies and reimbursement specialists. We discovered that the major driver of these asthma clinics were due to low-income, inner-city, urban kids. We also discovered that there are 2 main subpopulations of these pediatric asthmas, those that belong to affluent groups and those that belong to low socioeconomic populations. Many of the funding for these asthma clinics, however, came from government sources such as federal money, county, and city money, often in the form of grants. So there was a huge problem here because a majority of the people who were actually affected by this disease were those who couldn't afford to be in the system, and only less than 10% of those who could afford it were enclosed within the system and could afford the healthcare providers, the long-term healthcare providers, and closed system care. And so our target market was much smaller than we initially thought. We initially came into this class thinking that we had a $1.8 billion market consisting
Okay.
of people.
So we got to the part in the video that I really wanted you to see. They started with a series of hypotheses. They went out of the building, as they said, and conducted interviews, gathered evidence, and started to say that actually the market size was far smaller than they originally had hoped, and that their initial target audience seemingly were not interested. So the business model canvas that they had was radically changed to start to identify different target customer segments, different value propositions, and indeed different or slightly different key activities that would deliver potential success. But commercially, even with that great team that they had on board, you know, the evidence of the market was such that they had to pivot, they had to change from their original idea, which looked like that, to a relatively different idea and a different market audience. Does that make sense, guys? Are there any questions about that? Okay. So the point then is that here we are. What we're striving to achieve is to be found guilty, is to have sufficient evidence that we can reduce the risk associated with being an entrepreneur and developing our business idea, because we've gathered the evidence and we can show our life partners, our business partners, potential funders, the evidence that demonstrates that you've got a really great chance of being successful in your ongoing or relatively new businesses. Are there any questions about what we've been talking about thus far? We've only got another 3 hours to go. No, don't say that, Jen. Flipping heck. Got to let the cat out yet. No questions. So you will be sent this action plan. You've got a copy in the handout that was emailed to you. What I'm going to encourage you to do is to just think through what you now need to do as a consequence of what we've been talking about this afternoon. And I'm conscious of the time. We're pretty much spot on 5 o'clock. So what I will do is I will just move on and conclude today's session with a couple of slides, but then really encourage you to come back to this action plan and say, okay, then as a result of the introduction, the use of the business model canvas, how many canvases can we develop? What are the ideas? How can I demonstrate? How can I prove my guilt of planning to build a really successful business? So what we've been talking about then is being aware of not just being a technician. We talked about the E-Myth and Michael Gerber. We really need to be sensitive to and open to various opportunities, entrepreneurial opportunities. It's not a question of whether you can, but whether you should. And we've been talking most of the afternoon about the evidence that you need to gather, because you have some skills. The opportunities that you identify might be relevant to the skills that you've got. They might not be. So the issue then is, what resources can you bring together as an entrepreneur that would address the opportunity that you have identified? We talked about Gruber and Tal's attractiveness map, and trying to get some sense of priority over the opportunities that you've identified. We also talked about trends and macroeconomic factors that will affect your business. One of the most powerful, as we all know, is that of tech and digital. I've shared with you a link to Digital Boost and their resource library that can really help in this area. But ultimately, we need to take the canvases that we've generated and make sure that they are consistent with the vision that you have for your respective businesses. Where do you want to be in 3 years' time? And then work backwards. Say, okay, then what do we need to do in order to achieve that success? But, you know, it's not all sweetness and light. We have to challenge, we have to get that evidence, we have to think about what assumptions underlie our business. And ultimately then, when the evidence points in whatever direction it does, we may or may not then to change the canvas, change our business model idea in order to reflect what evidence it is that we have gathered, and hence the term about the pivot. So that's sort of 4 minutes late. That's, for me, that's quite good. Normally I bang on for at least another couple of hours. Flipping heck. Rachel does a nut, but don't tell her I said that. That's today. We've been focusing on the business model canvas. The implication, though, of course, is that you've come up with a really fantastic idea. How then do we finance it? And the next workshop that I'll be delivering in this series says, okay, then we've got a plan. How do we then use the business model canvas and the various facets that it contains to improve our chances of being investment ready?